This week on Christian World News, Russia is named a top violator of religious freedom. We'll tell you about the law that's cracking down on evangelicals and talk with one of its victims. Plus, fired up for Jesus. For 2 straight days, these Christians went without sleep in a marathon session of worshiping, praying, and singing to God. And forgotten genocide. More than 100 years ago, an entire population, including many Christians, was wiped out. A new movie is telling their story for the very first time.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 러시아를 전 세계 최악의 종교 탄압 국가로 지정하라며 미국 국무부를 압박하는 한 단체가 있습니다. 미 국무부는 현재 북한과 이란, 중국을 종교 탄압국으로 지정한 상태인데요. 러시아도 예외는 아닙니다. 그동안 정교회를 제외한 소수 종교인들을 핍박해 왔기 때문이죠. 새로 도입된 법이 문제였습니다. 오늘의 첫 번째 소식입니다.
On July 20th, 2016, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed new amendments to a law that governed religious life. Under the guise of confronting terrorism, Putin gave authorities the power to ban preaching, praying, proselytizing, and handing out religious materials outside government-sanctioned churches. The U.S. State Department warned the move signaled a troubling Russian trend of intimidation and harassment. Sergei Rakuba's organization works in Russia and in 13 other countries of the former Soviet Union.
This law is known among evangelical Christians in Russia as an anti-missionary law because it places harsh restrictions on evangelical churches and foreign missionary organizations.
Among other things, the law required foreign missionaries to have a permit to evangelize. Also, reading your Bible, singing, or simply praying outside a registered church, even in a home, became illegal. Roman Lankin is a lawyer with the Slavic Center for Law and Justice.
The law inflicted serious damage because suddenly many Christians feared that just talking about faith or sharing with others about God was a crime.
Andrea Desnetsky is a prominent Russian commentator.
So basically the law tells us not to do anything that can be called a missionary activity, including saying, I believe in Jesus, for instance.
Supporters say the law is necessary to confront terrorism, especially acts perpetrated by radical Muslims. But Rakuba insists there's a more sinister agenda.
The Russian authorities are trying to restrict the Protestant and evangelical movements and stop them from spreading their influence and the message of the gospel.
But there's one group that's been left alone. The law is unlikely to affect the Orthodox Church, which some 70% of Russians say they belong to.
For the moment, never, never, never. Because now the Russian Orthodox Church is closely associated with the state.
Desnetsky, who is Russian Orthodox, says there are growing numbers within his church that see all non-Orthodox Christians as cults or foreign spies. And he's not happy about it.
For some, Protestants are, if not enemies, then potential danger. So they need, to their opinion, some containing.
Actually, the word Orthodox in Russian, pravoslavny, means the proper way to glorify God, which implies that every other way is improper.
The Russian Orthodox Church has a powerful ally in Vladimir Putin. The president has elevated the church's prominence and influence in recent years. In fact, in some corners of Russian society, the Orthodox Church is considered the national church.
And this idea is being propagated by mass media, society, and unfortunately by the Orthodox Church and the government.
For many religious minorities, this is a fight for all non-Orthodox faiths to have the right to practice their beliefs freely in Russia.
한편 작년 8월 미국인인 도널드 오시와르드는 러시아에서 선교 활동을 한 혐의로 기소돼 유죄를 선고받았습니다. 인터뷰로 한번 만나보시죠.
Pastor Osawari joins us via Skype from Oriel, Russia. Don, after 14 years of living in Russia, you just bought a one-way plane ticket home. How do you feel? This has got to be a difficult decision, right?
Yes, sir. It's an end to what I've spent the last 22 years of my life preparing for and participating in ministry in Russia following the fall of the Soviet Union. And of course, I'm disappointed that it turned out this way. The people that we formed a little family of faith here have lost something very valuable to them, and I'm always going to leave a piece of my heart here in Russia.
Russia recently declared the Jehovah's Witnesses an extremist organization and banned them from operating in the country. What will stop authorities from going after other groups such as Baptists or Pentecostals?
You're right about that. In my opinion, it's just the first step, because as far as they're concerned, a Baptist or a Pentecostal is pretty much, the way they look at it, the same thing as a Jehovah's Witness. And if the Jehovah's Witnesses don't have their freedom, then I don't see how any of us do.
What kind of Russia are you leaving behind?
I'm leaving behind a very different Russia than I came to 14 years ago. There was virtually unlimited religious freedom here 14 years ago when I came. It was very refreshing to have that atmosphere and that environment after 70 years of communism. But now you have a Russia that is becoming much more oppressive, much more controlling, and much less free.
The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom says Russia is one of the world's worst violators of religious freedom. In fact, they've asked the State Department to label Russia as a country of particular concern. Do you agree with their assessment?
I absolutely agree that Russia is heading in a very wrong direction when it comes to religious freedom, and I would say yes, it is a special concern as we look at religious freedom around the world.
How can we pray for Christians in Russia?
Pray that they will have wisdom, pray that they will have boldness, pray that the Lord will cause the local officials to not aggressively prosecute the believers, and pray that the believers will stand strong and will not give up on practicing their faith just because it's become more difficult.
We wish you the best. Don Arsawadi joining us from Oryol, Russia. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, George.
프란치스코 교황이 이슬람 지도자들과 무슬림들을 향해 주님의 이름으로 폭력을 멈추고 평화, 대화, 그리고 화해를 위해 힘써야 한다는 메시지를 남겼습니다.
The Roman Catholic Pope met with Egypt's President al-Sisi during an historic two-day visit to Cairo. He also spoke at a world-renowned Muslim University of Higher Learning. Egyptian Christians said the Pope's visit brought them encouragement just days after two churches were attacked on Palm Sunday.
아르메니아인들은 중동에서도 오랜 기독교 역사를 갖고 있는데요. 지금으로부터 100여 년 전 이들이 처참히 희생을 당했던 한 사건이 있었습니다. 지금은 잊혀진 이 이야기가 영화로 만들어졌습니다. 영화 프라미스의 제작진과 배우들을 함께 만나보시죠.
I have to go.
Mikhail.
I have to find them.
Mikhail, leave these people alone. You're safe in the woods.
No, I'm not safe. No one here is safe. Don't you see what's happening?
We've lived through these Turkish threats before.
Threats? They want us dead. I have to get us out of here before there's no time left. Trust me. It's all right. I'm getting us out of here.
In The Promise, Oscar Isaac plays an Armenian desperate to save his family from being rounded up and killed.
Come with me. Mikhail! What a pleasant surprise. Chris, Mikhail is the nephew of Monsieur Bogosian.
Christopher Myers. Hey, nice to meet you.
The legendary Chris Myers.
Emory Ogun, notorious playboy, frequents opium dens. How and why the hell did they let you in here? Good to see you. May I introduce Mademoiselle Anna Kassari.
Constantinople is blessed by your beauty, Mademoiselle Kassarian.
Nice to meet you.
Please join us. Sir.
I'm so happy we get to meet when I'm not teaching.
Yes, what a surprise. Chris is a star reporter for the Associated Press. We met in Paris when my father was deputy consul.
His father was a spy.
That's why you were such a good drinking companion. You were looking to expose us. A toast to old friends and you. Cheers.
Christian Bale portrays an American journalist documenting the atrocities. Still, there is a love story.
You read this script and you get to the end. How would you describe the story? Heartbreaking? How do you describe it?
It's a heartbreaking story of survival. It attempts to show this very human story set inside a very tragic time, which is the Armenian genocide at the turn of the century, 1915, where 1.5 million Armenians perished.
But ultimately, it's very hopeful, isn't it? Right? I mean, each displays great strength in the midst of adversity.
This is described as one of the greatest and least known catastrophes of the 20th century. Any thoughts on why?
You were getting the crumbling of the Ottoman Empire and the birth of the Turkish nation. There was great Turkish nationalism at that time. And then the lack of consequences, and hence the lack of knowledge about it. Of course, it's uncomfortable to admit that the birth of a nation came from the pains of the extermination of an entire race.
What's the ultimate promise in the promise?
Well, there's a promise that the character of Mikhail has towards the woman he's betrothed to, that he will return. But I think overall there's a promise that never to forget by the filmmakers, by Armenians in general, by anybody who has lost somebody.
And one of the great things about this film is that 100% of the proceeds of the film go to charity. It goes to charities for human rights, for anti-genocide movements, injustices, and making sure that it doesn't happen again.
얼마 전 전 세계 기독교인들이 부활절을 기념했습니다. 그런데 이 중에서도 대만의 부활절은 좀 더 특별했는데요. 최초로 전국 각 도시에서 기독교인들이 모여 대만의 예수 그리스도를 전파하는 행사를 가졌다고 합니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
Nothing could stop them from singing and celebrating over Easter weekend. Taiwanese were fired up. For Jesus, church leaders in Taiwan invited Christians from around the country to join the most important occasion.
This nation needs God. Each one of us needs to know God and follow Him. Only in Jesus will Taiwan become a better country.
This year's Easter gathering was the largest for Taiwanese Christians in the past 40 years. For 48 hours, Christians of various ages prayed and sang together without sleeping. They passionately praised God and thanked Him for what He has done for the nation. Church leaders believe God is about to do something big.
Taiwan is experiencing some unprecedented changes right now. God is in control of Taiwan. We need to work harder to wake up each Taiwanese to tell them about Jesus. This nation needs prayers, and we will not stop praying for this nation.
Some of the church leaders urged Christians to pray for some controversial issues, like legalizing gay marriage and education policy reform. They want Taiwan's leaders to understand only God can provide the country with the best future.
Our government leaders need to know Jesus and pray for the unity of the nation. Taiwan is like a fountain. Once it's broken into pieces, the water will start to leak. We need to make sure our nation provides a solid foundation to receive the blessings and guidance of Jesus.
Christians in Taiwan will continue to make their voices heard, planning bigger events. They're praying that someday their government leaders will also come to join the family of Jesus.
The pastor reminded us the meaning of purity. As Christ followers, it's important for us to stay pure for Jesus. He has a pure heart, and we can all do this.
CBN에서는 아시아를 담당하는 특파원이 최근 SNS를 통해 복음을 전파하고 있는데요. 표준 중국어를 사용하는 이들에게는 SNS가 매우 효과적이라고 합니다.
A page specifically for Mandarin-speaking people? Why?
Well, George, as you know, Chinese people are actually living everywhere today in the world. And the reason why we want to start the page, the biggest goal is to share what Christ is doing all around the world. And we let people understand that God is working in many nations and also in our lives. That's why we designed this page for this purpose.
By the way, in China, where you are from, can you see access Facebook page there?
Well, right now the issue with China is not mainland China. It's mainland China because the firewall and because all the challenges. But outside China, for example, in many other countries or cities, that Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, even in United States, we have a large number of Chinese population. So that's why we keep the content 100% in Chinese, so they will understand it. And also, you will see a lot of stories that you never seen, or probably you would never see in other major networks, as you know. Can you give us a sort of a taste of what people can expect when they go to the Facebook page? Oh, absolutely. So every day, and we have a brand new stories related to family issues, related education, and also most importantly about the world issues. And also we have a lot of images and pictures that you can share with your friends, 100% in Chinese with the scriptures on it, so they'll understand what God is doing in our lives. Okay, terrific. And as Annie mentioned, you can go and see these great reports as well as his coverage here on Christian World News. We encourage you to check it out. Thank you so much, Mantelli.
미국에서는 트럼프 내각의 관료들이 매주 성경 공부 모임을 갖는다고 합니다.
The vice president and 8 administration officials, including Attorney General Jeff Sessions, sponsored the meetings. They're led by the founder of Capital Ministries, Ralph Drollinger. He says when a country's leaders seek God, it puts the nation in a position to be blessed beyond all that we can ask or think. Leaders of the Bible study say President Trump is always welcome to join.
지난 200년간 미국의 국가 원수들은 모두 성 요한 성공회 교회에서 예배를 드려왔습니다. 트럼프 대통령도 예외는 아닌데요. 대통령의 교회라 불리는 성 요한 교회를 소개해드립니다.
Sitting across the street from the White House. St. John's Episcopal Church has served each commander-in-chief since James Madison, the nation's 4th president. Built in 1816, its proximity proved to be a dilemma for church leaders.
They said, what are we going to do to accommodate the President of the United States if he wants to attend a service?
The solution? Pew 54, which for 200 years has become known as the President's Pew.
People would come early to try to sit close by so they could shake the hand of the President when they passed the peace during the service. And that got to be kind of funny, and the rector often tells a story about how the church would slightly tilt to the left because everybody was sitting on the left-hand side when they thought the President was going to attend a service.
When the President's not in town, turns out anyone can sit in this pew. But odds are when the Commander-in-Chief shows up, Secret Service might kick you out.
I can tell you this pew is never vacant. Even at the earliest of the services.
To top that, an 18th century prayer book is put in the pew when the Commander-in-Chief attends service. That prayer book now contains signatures from past presidents.
Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump.
Oh, so he did sign.
Yeah.
But not every president took advantage of their reserved space.
He would sit in the very last pew on the back door.
That man is the nation's 16th president, Abraham Lincoln.
He would come in quietly, sit in the back pew by himself, and contemplate, pray, do what he had to do to deal with the burdens of the Civil War. And just before the service would end, he would quietly walk out that back door.
The doors remain open at St. John's both as a parish and as a piece of history in the heart of Washington, D.C. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, Washington.
현재 전 세계에서 가장 나이가 많은 사람, 바로 117세의 바이올렛 모스인데요. 자메이카 출신의 바이올렛 모스의 장수 비법은 신앙이라고 합니다. 오늘의 마지막 소식입니다.
At 117, Violet Moss Brown has been declared the world's oldest living person, something she says she never expected.
No, I didn't know that I would become this. I feel that I would be part of a long time ago. But thank God for whatever He has given to me. This is what God has given to me, so I have to take it long.
Affectionately known as Aunt V, Brown was born March 10, 1900. She says she attended church for most of her life and credits serving the Lord for her long life.
I've done nearly everything in the church. I spent all my time in the church, from a child right up.
And when it comes to food, this super centenarian says she eats just about anything, with a few exceptions.
Anything at all. With my belly full. I don't eat pork, and I don't eat chicken, but I eat any other things. Green, mutton, bacon, fish. That's what I eat.
Meanwhile, Brown's eldest son is 97 years old, which could make him the oldest living person in the world with a parent also alive. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.